So many of you listen to this stuff about trauma, whether it be on my page or places that I go talk. Some of you listen about this trauma and you think, I'm not really sure that it's really affected me. I'm not really sure that it's affecting my family. I'm not really sure that it's made me this angry person like I talk about that I was. I know I sound stern now. This is just stern. You should have seen me angry. And I thought that too. I knew that it was making an impact, but in my mind, when I was still doing law enforcement for those 15 years, 20 years of public safety, in my mind, it was just changing me to be a little bit harder person because the job was hard and the job was important. I knew that maybe I didn't have the traditional family, that maybe my vigilance, while keeping us safe, made things a little different and I took things a little more seriously, more sternly. I've never laid a hand on my wife and kids. I've punched plenty of walls, I've thrown plenty of things, but I was just proud that I'd never been one of those a-holes who laid a hand on their family. Because I don't like domestic violence. I responded to domestic violence and I saw that it changed everything once it happened. The relationship will never be the same. It's overcomable, but it will never be the same when you lay your hand on somebody. And I felt like because I hadn't done that I wasn't really affecting my family, at least not so negatively that it was all bad. Years later, of getting out of law enforcement, I'm doing a lot of these talks across the nation that I get to do. And my wife had actually never been able to go to them because they usually just fly me out, put me up at the hotel, I do the speech, and they fly me home. But it was local to my area now. It was a rural EMS symposium where a lot of smaller counties all get together and do a symposium themselves because rural EMS is a little different than inner city. And she got to go with me because I'm just driving down to it. And about halfway there, I get this idea, good or bad, you'll see. Most rural EMS, a lot of the times, it's family. Dad's a fireman, mom's a medic, or vice versa, or one's law enforcement, one's EMS, one's dispatch, one's EMS, so on and so forth. Sometimes even the kids get involved. So this being a rural EMS symposium, I asked her if she wanted to say really what it was like to deal with me during those darker times, those angry times, those times where clearly things were changing and I wasn't doing well as I look back on it. And about halfway through my talk, I'm in speaker mode. I've done this speech all over the place, and she gets up there and she talks for about 5 minutes. And one of the things I remember her distinctly talking about is that she and her kids, my wife and the kids, continuously walked around on eggshells. They walked around on eggshells. Never knew what was going to piss Dad off next. Constantly ruined vacations with anger. Nobody was ever happy. Dad was never happy. Husband was never happy. Made sure everybody else wasn't happy, if even not the initial intent of things that I would say. And because I'm in speaker mode, I actually remember looking at her and thinking, lady, why'd you stay with that dumbass? Why would you stay with somebody like that makes you walk around on eggshells? I don't understand that. I've seen that in domestic violence situations. But I was in speaker mode. So she gets done, I thank her, she goes, sits back down. I kind of turned to my PowerPoint to see where I was so I could continue my usual speech, and I thought, I'm that guy. I'm that guy that made my family walk around on eggshells. Now, I don't believe that they were scared all the time. I think they honestly knew I would not cause them harm because I never have even gotten close to that. Never raised a hand to any of them. Won't do it. But I've punched a lot of holes in walls. I have ruined a lot of vacations. I have stopped us from doing fun things because of my anger. I did make things way too serious. I have thrown things. They've seen it. Not setting a good example. I'd be embarrassed to say those things, except I've worked so diligently to fix that. And my family's in a much better place. What if you don't realize that your spouse and your kids are dealing with this? What if you don't realize that your family doesn't invite you to stuff anymore? Your friends don't invite you to stuff anymore because you're just that serious guy all the time. And part of trauma is not to just sit around crying or broken down on the floor, constantly thinking about one event. 90% of the people that I work with It's culminating events. Either they can't pick just one, or they don't really realize that maybe there's one that really bothered them. And maybe it's not. There's some cumulative stress. There's some cumulative trauma, that complex PTSD side that I specialize in. But I promise you that it's changing you and it's affecting the people around you. Now, I know there's people that listen to my stuff or don't listen to my stuff. I get more hate comments than you probably think, because I just ban those morons because they're not worth talking to. Most of them hide behind a fake name and a fake picture, so I just send them on their way packing. If you're not man enough to let me see who you really are and what your credentials are in your life, I'm not going to argue with you. It's the internet. It's stupid. Some of you should take that advice. Some of you should really take that advice. But sometimes those negative things that I'll hear is, you signed up for the job, you knew it was going to happen. I've done that job, I can deal with it just fine. I'm not going to touch the, you signed up for the job, you knew what you were signing up for. That could be a whole nother video right there, because you know everything when you're 21 signing up for stuff. People say that are some of the most ignorant people in the world. But maybe you don't realize the things that you're causing your family. And maybe they're not miserable. Maybe they're not walking around on eggshells. Maybe they're not scared. Maybe they're not as bad of a place. Your relationship isn't as bad of a place as mine was. But I didn't think mine was either. I knew it wasn't amazing. But you know what? The cops weren't coming to my house. That was my measure. All right? The cops weren't coming to my house. Nobody was hurt. Nobody seemed scared. Child Protective Services wasn't getting called, so I just must be this strong, superior, type A dad. Great husband. Wasn't a horrible husband. Wasn't a horrible dad. Could have done a hell of a lot better. And I could have done a hell of a lot better by realizing that they wanted to be part of me growing and not just part of the standoff section of the house. One of the things I hear all the time is, I cannot talk to my wife. She'll never understand. She may not. She may not understand the things that you see, the trauma that you deal with. I've always been a big proponent that unless you're there, it is hard to describe. She married you for a reason, dummy. She married you because she thinks you're a good person. She wants to see you continue to grow as a good person. She does want to be involved. And I'm not saying right now, go home, tell them all the gory details. Maybe you know your spouse well enough that you know that may not be a good idea and they can't handle that and they're just going to shut off. What about if you go home and listen to them? Yes, my wife, God love her, I like to say, can turn a 4-minute story into 45 minutes. She's a very detail-oriented person. She wants me to hear about her day. I used to think it was complaining. That's why I never went home and talked about it. I didn't want to come across as complaining. Everybody's a little different how they handle the stress. She just wanted me to listen. She just wanted me to listen and go, dang, that's a day right there. Tough day. She deals with a lot of trauma too in her line of work. Why wouldn't you think she'd want the same thing? How come all these marriages fall apart after dealing with high stress and trauma, high stress careers? Because you don't go home. Because you go home and you feel alone. Because you go home and you feel alone because you don't think she'll understand, because we've decided she won't understand. Some of the best moments I've had is telling my wife I wasn't doing well. I mean, it wasn't a fun moment, but it was the willingness to tell her what was going on up here. Because if you don't talk to them, you're going to cause animosity. You're going to hold that in. And I will always say, animosity is the killer of all relationships. Maybe you're a better husband and dad, wife, daughter, mom. Maybe you're better than I was. Maybe you better check your surroundings. Maybe you know it's going well and you're spending your time blaming them. There's ways out. EMDR therapy saved me. There's ways out. If I'm the guy for the job, please reach out to me. Social media, I'm easy to find. Our website's theangryvikingtherapist.com. If I'm not the right person, I'll find somebody who is. I don't want this to be a commercial. I want your family to quit walking around on eggshells, asshole.